Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to cut through all the noise in global transportation. You see, the headlines, they might be pointing one way, but the actual data, the financial reports, the backroom politics, they are telling a much deeper and more turbulent story. The source material for this explainer just puts it perfectly. While the news cycle was celebrating a big US-China trade truce, that's being described as just high-frequency noise. It's a distraction, really, from some severe underlying weaknesses that are shaking the entire system.
Okay, so let's dive right into this contradiction. On the one hand, the headlines are selling us the story of de-escalation, of a trade truce. But the reality for the folks in the industry? Well, it's something else entirely. We're talking about deeply unstable markets and intensifying long-term risks across shipping, aviation, and trucking.
We're going to start with the maritime sector because what's happening there is a perfect storm, seriously. It's not just facing one crisis, but two, and they're colliding at the exact same time: a collapsing market and a brand new geopolitical battleground over climate policy. Now, what's really wild here is just the sheer scale of this collapse. Despite that so-called truth, trans-Pacific container rates have absolutely plummeted. I mean, look at this. We're talking a nearly 60% drop from China to the US West Coast. This is not a small dip, folks. This is a market in total free fall. And it looks like the pain is far from over. The core issue is just rampant overcapacity. You have way too many ships and not nearly enough stuff to put on them. Because of that, analysts are forecasting that global spot rates could fall another 25% in 2026. That would push carriers straight into loss-making territory. And just as the industry is trying to grapple with that brutal economic reality, bam, a political crisis hits. A major global climate framework for shipping, the IMO Net Zero Framework, was just postponed for a whole year. And why? Intense political pressure, specifically from the US and Saudi Arabia. So this is the really critical part. Climate policy has suddenly become a trade weapon. The US has explicitly threatened some pretty severe retaliatory actions against any nation that supports this framework. We're talking about blocking their vessels from ports, imposing new fees, restricting visas for crews, and even sanctioning foreign officials. Okay, so that's the mess at sea. But believe me, that instability isn't just staying on the water. The aviation and ground logistics sectors are facing their own unique crises, and these are rooted in production failures and sudden, jarring supply shocks. In aviation, the big story is chronic production failure. Just take a look at Boeing's Q3 results. The headline number here is a massive $4.9 billion charge, all because its flagship 777X program has been delayed again. That one charge was enough to push its entire commercial airplane division into a $5.3 billion loss. And listen, this isn't just a number on a balance sheet. The real-world impact is a complete breakdown in trust and planning. The president of Emirates, one of Boeing's biggest customers, said he found out about the new delay to 2027 from the media. From the media. That's how you compromise fleet planning for major airlines all over the globe. Meanwhile, on the ground, the U.S. trucking market just flipped, almost overnight. It went from what was a calm, low-price environment to what the industry is calling a strategic tightening. And what's so crucial here is that this wasn't caused by a surge in demand. Nope, it was triggered by a sudden regulatory crackdown on the driver supply, basically creating an instant capacity crunch out of thin air. So you've got all this instability, right, in the markets, in production, in politics. So what's the industry's big move? Where are they placing their bets? It's all accelerating down one clear path forward: technology and automation. It's not a nice-to-have anymore, it's an absolute strategic necessity. And what we're seeing are these massive new alliances forming to manage all that risk and cost. This one is a perfect example. It's like an all-star team. You've got a vehicle manufacturer, Stellantis, an AI powerhouse, NVIDIA, an electronics expert, Foxconn, and a global ride-hailing operator, Uber. They're all combining their expertise to de-risk the absolutely enormous cost of developing driverless tech. And I want to be clear, this is not just some fluffy press release. They have a concrete, very real timeline. They're aiming for initial deployments in 2027 with a target of 100,000 autonomous vehicles on the road. This just shows how seriously the industry is chasing automation as the answer to all this volatility. So let's bring this all together.
what does all this actually mean for anyone who depends on global supply chains? Which, let's be honest, is pretty much everyone. What are the real takeaways from this new reality?
Here is the bottom line. The old playbook, the one that was all about just managing costs, it's obsolete. Throw it out. The new focus has to be on managing risk. First, expect continued weakness in shipping. That overcapacity is a structural problem, not a temporary blip. Second, you have to anticipate long-term capacity constraints in the air and on the ground. Third, political risk, from climate policy to trade, is now a direct threat to your operations. And finally, that pivots technology, it's no longer optional. And that leaves us with one final, critical question to think about. The source material makes it crystal clear that stability as we knew it is gone. Volatility is the new normal. So the question isn't if the next shock is coming, it's whether your strategy is actually built to survive it when it does.